get started? If everyone could just
You got the Wi-Fi?
up and we'll do some introductions, and then we've got a very special guest today. So I think we'll get started here, and like we usually do, we'll just go around the room and do some quick introductions. If you're someone that comes regularly, maybe just be brief. If you're new here, just tell us who you are, where you're from, and maybe just a quick little thing about yourself. We'll do the introductions, and then we're going to have Carl, who is a member of the Canadian Trucker Freedom Group. And he's going to talk to us about what? Trucks, freedom, what?
Well, I'm going to tell you the backstory to what happened and what led up to the trucker convoy that formed the greatest peaceful protest I think the world has ever seen.
Yeah, baby. Very excited to hear what you have to say, Carl. And you were saying earlier that this is going to be live streamed. So if anybody does not want to be live streamed, if you don't want your face on the camera, this is going back to Canada as live streamed, then you can opt out by sitting over there. You won't be on the camera. And
there goes Enrique over there.
So anyway, with that initial announcement, I'll just start over here and we'll pass the mic around and you can introduce yourself real quick and then we'll get started with what Carl has to tell us about. So your name and where you're from.
Aloha, I'm Jerry from Ireland, and it's great to be back in these freedom doodles, because I switched over from all of it for a while, from my mental health views, from all sides of the media and everything, and it's great to be back.
Hi, my name is Murray H, I better say, and I am from Winnipeg.
Winnipeg, Canada.
Yay, Winnipeg! Is there another? That was a good comment.
Hi, I'm Shimon Christina. I'm from California.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm from Edinburgh. Okay, thank you. I actually host 3 different things here in Playa now. I host the PDC Yes group, so if you haven't heard about that, pdcyes.com is next Sunday. And it's for anyone that's interested in personal development. So we've got a couple of amazing speakers coming along next Sunday. And it's free of charge, and it's here at Boozos at 1 o'clock next Sunday. I also host the Playa Businesses Unite, so every Friday here at 1 o'clock. For those that are interested in developing their businesses further, taking business serious. And I'm the only one, I think, in the world that I know of that teaches cash flow from crypto. So I do that on occasion here as well when there's enough call for it. I've been blocked by every local Telegram group for offering my own workshops, so I can't tell people about it, so I don't offer it very often, but if there's people ask for it, then I'll do it. So anyway, that's me. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Peter from the Netherlands. We are living now about 13 months here, and it's amazing. And we are managing things. We help people with their health, with MMS, CDS, and some other things, photobiomodulation, and it's really great to help others, to be in service. And this evening I'm going to do an awesome ayahuasca. It will take about 12 hours.
Hi, my name is Veronica. I am from Argentina. I'm living here for more than 6 years now.
Hi, my name is Allison. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I flew down here on the 29th of September, got my residency in about 5 weeks, and very happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Janice from Edmonton, Alberta. I've been here since October. just want to let you know that we were with you in spirit at that convoy. We were all together.
Thank you.
I'm Janice's lesser half. My name is Stu, and I'm originally from Winnipeg, and lived in Edmonton for 31 years, and 7 months here.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I'm here since September, and from Quebec, Canada.
I'm Alex from Scotland, and I've been here about 8-9 months, and probably leaving in about a week. So I'm just waiting for my visa to come through, and then I'm heading back. But I might be back here in 6 months or something like that. I'll be just watching what happens and thinking about how to react to that. But it's been great to hang out with all you guys, and I'm really looking forward to hearing this about the truckers today. It was such a momentous time. It was great to see some resistance, so thank you very much for that. I look forward to your talk.
Hi there, I'm Angelica, half Mexican, half German. I've lived in this area already for 3 years, a couple of years ago. And I could only spend 2 weeks here right now because I'm doing paperwork so I can move back here next 6-8 months or so. Thank you.
My name is Brendan, and I'm from Vancouver, Canada. And I've been here for 6 months working on a 4-year temporary residency.
Hi, I'm Pascal, also from Vancouver. Been here for a couple months. Yeah, I think I've met most of you. Looking forward to meet the ones that I haven't yet.
Hi everyone, my name is Katrina. I'm originally from California. I've been bouncing around, and I'm really delighted to be back here in Playa del Carmen, and I look forward to getting to know each of you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura. I'm also from California. Been in Mexico for a year now and Playa since January. That's about it.
Hi everyone, my name's Sean from the UK. Fled there a few months ago and I'm just freestyling it every day at the moment, so we'll see what happens.
Hi, my name's Paul. I have been homeless for over 12 years from the United States. And I have been coming to these meetings for the last couple of months, and I'm leaving in less than a week, so this will be my last one for a while, but I hope to be back in the fall.
Oh, we might miss you, Paul.
Hi, my name is Horace from Canada, and we're coming to the end of a 5 or 6 month stay here in Playa, and hopefully back in the fall.
Hi, I'm Iris, and I'm from Canada originally, and I am enjoying Playa del Carmen and meeting like-minded people.
Hello, I'm Bruce from Saskatchewan, Canada, and been here back since January, and loving every day.
All yours. You got the floor, amigo.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Carl Krebs. I come from a small city just south of Winnipeg called Winkler, Manitoba. And for a long time, Winkler was in the crosshairs of the provincial government of Manitoba because of its resistance and our refusal to do something that violated the health and the religious beliefs of our people in our city, because we have always believed that God is the giver of all rights and that we have bodily autonomy, and many people would not subject themselves to what they believed would be harmful to their body. And so we became a very controversial city. But today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what happened in Ottawa and the events that led up to it, because there's much more that happened in the background to lead up to this. To start off with, I am a truck driver. I was a 12-year truck driver hauling long distance from the Mexican border, picking up fresh produce and bringing it up to Canada. So I crossed the border regularly. And when the government started to indicate that there were going to be changes made, the warnings and the writing was on the wall that we were going to be in a collision course with truck drivers, that is for sure. But let me back up just a step and share with you a personal comment. The division that's happened in Canada started when our government deemed certain people to be essential. And if you ask yourself the question, if I'm essential and you're not, doesn't that therefore make you non-essential? That was divisive language that started to divide our country. And so we had people like myself, frontline workers, healthcare workers, EMS, police, firemen, all deemed to be essential. Therefore, we had certain privileges. But it didn't take long, because many of my friends work in the healthcare industry, for that to change. And suddenly the essential became the expendable. And when the government started to mandate healthcare workers, we as truck drivers knew we were next. Because there would be certainly supply chain interruptions with truckers who would refuse to do that which they did not believe was right for them, because our Constitution states that vaccinations are not mandatory in our country. And we all know how the government has been regarding our Constitution. So as we were leading up, suddenly the announcement came that as of January 15, truckers would have to be vaccinated across the border. Then we knew the fight was on. Then we knew we were heading somewhere, but we didn't know where. So a young lady named Tamara Leach, a warrior, a champion, that many of you have seen on TV and on the news everywhere, started to think, we need to go to Ottawa. We need truckers to go to Ottawa. Let's make it a convoy. And the fundraising started to happen. The GoFundMe was the crowdfunding platform that they chose. And they set an initial goal of about $300,000, thinking that this was for food, shelter, and fuel. The essentials of every truck driver. Food, shelter, fuel. And that goal was quickly exceeded. And that became the indication that Canadians were going to stand behind the truckers. That goal was quickly surpassed. Then 500,000 became the new benchmark. And that went by. And they blew by every goal they set. Then we knew Canadians were starting to wake up and support the truckers. So eventually, the GoFundMe reached over $10 million. $10 million pledged was not just an amount that was sufficient, it was beyond sufficient to support it. It was an indication that Canadians were going to stand up and fight the government. And the truckers, the unlikely people, are going to be the way to Ottawa. So the truckers began their convoy around January the 23rd. Trucks coming out of the western part of the country, trucks coming out of the eastern part of the country, and trucks coming out from the southern part. We even had truckers from America come. It was the massive movement of which we've never seen. There were road captains appointed. There was a massive logistics challenge to bring this all together. And they did it in a wonderful way. The understanding was that we would always be peaceful. We would always be respectful. We would always be mindful of others. On January 28th, the truckers arrived in Ottawa, and the world knew they were there, and Ottawa knew they were there. And yes, it was loud. The horns were blaring, the streets filled with thousands of trucks. And we really did have, for the first time, the Canadian government concerned. Because everything that's led up to now has been an act of tyranny. The people have been afraid in Canada for far too long. And when you're afraid of your government, that's called tyranny. But when the government becomes afraid of you, that's called liberty. And it was time for us to unite. That was a moment in time. Canadians will never forget, I will never forget, my organization, Things That Matter, decided to go. I teamed up with the Winnipeg Alternative Media people, and we raised our own money for ourselves and to support other truckers. And we went to Ottawa because we knew one thing. If we were going to rely on the corrupt media, Canadians would never get the story straight. Because we watched as they reported, and then people watched as we reported, and it was surprising to see how many people were watching us and not watching the corrupt liberal media. the one that is bought and paid for with over $600 million of Canadian taxpayer money to this day. We were on the streets of Ottawa. The truckers showed up, the people showed up. It was the biggest protest of its kind in Canadian history, and it ended up being the largest peaceful protest in the world. The truckers didn't come there just for themselves. Yes, it started that. Truckers believed they had a right to operate their trucks and earn a living, and they shouldn't have had to choose between their health care and their paycheck. But the government had issued a declaration of war, in essential, against the truckers. Either you get vaccinated or you get out of the industry. And we're talking about veteran truckers. People have given their whole lives to supplying our stores in Canada faithfully through all kinds of harsh weather that I know personally about. We drive in some of the worst conditions that people wouldn't even think of traveling in. That's what truckers do. So the truckers came there because they wanted to prove to the government they were not going to bend, they were not going to give in, and we ended up bringing the whole country with us. So when we traveled, and I picked up the convoy at the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border, it was epic. I have never seen people come out in masses. We had people standing at the end of their driveway, 10:30 at night with a flag. One guy, waving his flag to every vehicle goes by. I said, this is incredible. This would never happen for anybody. It was a sign of solidarity. It was a sign that Canadians, the overpasses in Canada were filled. We came into some of the smallest cities. I looked at the population. I think everybody showed up. There's only 300 people. They're all here at the side of the road. We saw kids with posters. And you know, some of those signs that they had really touched you. If you were a human being, you couldn't help but be affected in the heart. Some signs said, I just want my mom to watch me play hockey. How did we ever get to a point where a parent couldn't watch their children play hockey, gymnastics, volleyball, basketball? That's what we were fighting for. Then we knew all of the Canadians' liberties and freedoms were on the line. So the truckers and it just empowered us. Every city, every town we passed by, more and more people, the outpouring of generosity, the meals, the gifts. People just came with massive amounts of supply to show we care, we love you, and we support you. And it was empowering to us, all of us, whether we were driving a truck and there were many people in their vehicles coming. When we arrived there, that's when the real protest began. And we didn't know how long we'd be there. We didn't know. But there were thousands and thousands of people on the street. And as we met, as we gathered, the hope and the intention was that we would have an audience with the government. That somebody from those buildings that serve us would come out onto the streets and talk to us. Nobody from that government ever came to the streets. We had a few people from the opposition party come out. Most of it, I think, was just camera opportunities. We had Pierre Poilievre on the street. We had Candice Bergen on the street. Nice, good for the camera. But you know, it didn't take long before they began to tell us, it's time to go home. We had no deal in hand. Nothing was offered to us. Not even the opportunity. This was the most disrespectful government in the history of Canada to never even try to sit down and talk to us. We were willing. All of the organizers were willing. They never came. And as things progressed, we knew that things were strong. The support was there, but the government wasn't going to engage us. And as the days dragged into weeks, we saw the support wax and wane. In the first 2 weeks of being there, the leader of the opposition, Aaron O'Toole, resigned. The chief of police, Peter Slowly, resigned. There were some victories there, and we thought maybe, just maybe now, there's going to be some engagement, some conversation. We wanted a deal, and we did not want to leave without a deal. The truckers were adamant. We had to have something. We needed the mandates dropped. That didn't happen. The weeks progressed. The protests came and went on the weekends. The crowd waxed and waned. But then we saw things that we never thought we'd see. The horses came in and trampled a lady. Without regard, without even stopping, they ran right over her. And the world watched. This happened on your watch, Prime Minister Trudeau. You are responsible for everything that happened that was wrong. We were peaceful. The truckers were peaceful. The truckers were respectful. The truckers shoveled the streets when the snow came. The truckers gathered the garbage even when they took the garbage cans away. The truckers fed the homeless, who were better fed that week than ever before. The crime rate in Ottawa dropped 70% while the truckers were there. Not a single window was broken. Not a single vehicle was vandalized. Nothing was damaged at the hands of truckers. And yet, when we arrived, the Prime Minister declared us a fringe minority with unacceptable views. That is as bad as what Hillary Clinton said when she said about half of Donald Trump's supporters are irredeemable. That became his message. You call us fringe minority with unacceptable views. Keep in mind, this is the same Prime Minister that stood outside the House of Commons when he was still an MP and said that democracy and the freedom and the right to protest was the air that a democracy needs. This is the man who stood on the streets of Ottawa and stood in support of protesters against the government. This is not that same guy. He stood in there, and wouldn't you know it, coincidentally, he got COVID. And he retreated to his own private cottage. And that earned him the dubious name of Coward of the Cottage. Justin Trudeau, the Coward of the Cottage. And he stayed there for a good long while. Of course, he eventually made his way into Parliament. And in that late meeting, he walked out of it. He'd had enough. That's all he had to say, and he walked out. Again, disrespecting the parliamentary procedures of our country. So we knew we were in for something here. Well, we could say that too. But there's a lot of things that happened, and as it progressed, with the resignation of the Ottawa police and the new interim police that came in, he had a different attitude. And he became aggressive, he became determined, he issued threats. The notices went out to the truckers that if you do not leave the streets, you will be arrested. The truckers didn't move. The truckers were backed by the Canadian population, and the world kept watching as this large protest happened, and the support was from every kind of alternative media source. We had some of the biggest names that report supporting us, and we had some of the most famous politicians in the world supporting us, so we had that momentum. However, when the crowd started to wane, when the crowd looked like it was diminishing, that's when they started to bring in, and they brought in thousands and thousands of police officers from all over the world. There was a UN plane parked in North Bay, Ontario, and there is no way you're going to convince me, because I was on that front line looking in the eyes of those people. They did not have a look about them that would tell me that they were Canadian. That may be hard to determine, but the feeling that you get in the presence of something like that, standing this close to them, told me these were police officers from outside the country. They were unmarked, unnamed, no badge numbers, no numbers of any kind. So anything they did, you could not effectively report that officer for what they were doing. They were there to put the resistance up. This is where it's going to start. And then one night, the fences started going up around the center block of Ottawa, so that there would be, we knew what was happening next. It's called kettling. And that's when they push the protesters and they don't allow you an exit out of the area. So they put up the fences, they barricaded the east, west, and center block of Parliament that we couldn't go in there. I find that ironic that the People's Building was now no longer accessible, and we never even once attempted to enter that. But those grounds are hallowed grounds. They belong to the Canadian people. So this was the setup. We knew it was coming. The forces came in. The RCMP had booked all kinds of hotels out. We were being pushed out of our own hotels, and there was nobody staying in them. They just booked and paid for all the hotels that they could. So that created a problem, because we were calling on Canadians to come. Come down here right now. We need you by the thousands, by the hundreds of thousands, because that moment was there. And when I look back at it now, I wonder how close we were. It's always when we look back at things that we remember what we did and what we might have done or should have done. And I believe we had a moment in time there when we, for a time, had our boot on their throat, as opposed to their boot on our throat. But as it is, as it goes, as human beings are, the support on the streets started to drop, the threats started, people started to get afraid again. All that fear was pushed out, and it started to return. Some left, some people stopped coming, People were threatened. If you came into Ottawa, you could be arrested. They set up points all around Ottawa. You could not get in. They were not allowing people to get in. So slowly they were choking off that group. They took away our fuel. They raided the Coventry Road location, which was a fueling stop. They came in there by the hundreds and took fuel away. That fuel was the fuel being used to heat the trucks of truckers. They came in there, they stole our fuel. Of course, all the funds were seized. The GoFundMe, $10 million, seized by the province, by the government. They started up the Give, Send, Go, which was the alternative. That raised $8.4 million US. And that organization stood up and they declared the Canadian government has no jurisdiction over us as a crowdfunding platform. But what they did is they stopped the supply. That those funds could not enter the country. FinTrack, the financial tracking system that we have in Canada, was employed, and they could not find any correlation to any terrorist group of any kind. But that didn't stop. Bitcoin wallets were seized and frozen. Canadian bank accounts of individuals who had pledged money started to get frozen. I knew many friends who had their bank accounts frozen. One of the worst examples of that was a single mom in BC, working for minimum wage, single mom, had her bank account frozen for a $50 donation. I can't think of how many hours she had to work for that $50 because she wanted to be a part of something that would be history. Those were just some of the examples. Corporations had their funds seized by the millions. It got worse after that. A class action lawsuit is still underway for over $300 million for the organizers of the convoy. Canadians have always had a right to protest. That's in our Constitution. This met all checked all the boxes as a peaceful protest within the rights of our Constitution. That didn't matter. We've had our Constitution violated for more than 2 years now. The money's frozen, the fuel's taken away, the people are threatened, the access to the red zone, as they called it, was restricted. The people of Ottawa started to mount. The city declared a state of emergency. The province declared a state of emergency. But we went further. The truckers, not the truckers in the Ottawa convoy, other truckers, other people wanting to show their support started to blockade the bridges. The Ambassador Bridge connects Canada, and about a quarter of the trade of Canada is done on that one bridge every day. Approximately $230 million of goods flow back and forth. They blockaded the Ambassador Bridge. That lasted for a number of days. The police came in, very violent, pulling everybody down, arresting anybody that was close to that. People that weren't even a part of it were being arrested. The bridge was open. The Coutts, Alberta border crossing was also blockaded by farmers. That ended up peacefully. So the borders were opened up. Eventually, the people that were trying to show their support for truckers relented and opened up those borders. Now we're back to Ottawa. All of what's happened is happening. The police arrived in one night. We saw the buses come in, and they started to mount an opposition. And they began to push us. The push started at the far end of Wellington, and it proceeded. With 24 hours, they had pushed all the people all the way down to Bank Street, which is just past the West Block. And on that corner, I was filming from the Bank of Canada Museum rooftop. They started to pepper spray the crowd. They started to act in aggressive manners against the peaceful crowd. We were standing there, singing our national anthem and reciting the Lord's Prayer. It doesn't get much more peaceful than that. And they showed us their worst when we gave them our best. Canadians were standing together, but it was too much. The force and the batons in the back, there's no opposition to that. You get pushed. And they turned the corner, and by 8 p.m. on Saturday, we were already down Bank Street to Sparks. We were still singing. We were still petitioning and talking to those officers as close as we could get to them and say, do the right thing. This is not right. You're doing the wrong thing because you're being told to. And those appeals, they were stoic, they were stone-faced. There was no reaction on any of them. By 8 p.m., it was over. And I returned the next morning, Sunday to find that there was no access into that area. They had barricaded everything, and Saturday night, the towing began. Many truckers lost their trucks. The vehicles that were damaged were the truckers' vehicles that were damaged. The windows were left open, the snow was allowed to blow in, there was massive damage, thousands of dollars in some cases to some of these trucks. They were impounded, there were penalties to pay. Many of them never got their truck back. That was how the government responded to a peaceful protest. And all they had to do was talk to us. All they had to do was listen, and something else could have happened. But when I look back at that time now, I wonder, did we go far enough? I wonder, in that moment, should we have done more? And that's something that haunts me, because I know a lot of us felt we had left it all on the field, so to speak. And the brute force of our government was simply overwhelming to us. But that is the trucker story as it unfolded in a very short form. But let me say something else here. The Canadian government was trying to divide us. That is clear from what I mentioned earlier about essential, non-essential. But what happened is on the streets of Ottawa, we became united. There are 3 bridges that connect Ottawa with Quebec. Those bridges were barricaded. No one was allowed to cross in. But the people of Quebec made it in. And when they came across, they said, we are no longer separatists. We are Canadian. Many of them. I remember meeting a young girl, 31 years old. She had her birthday. And we were gathered around the fire pits. Well, that's the other thing they took away. They disallowed fires, so we couldn't warm ourselves on the street. It was like living in some bad dream. But I remember meeting this young lady, and she said it was her birthday. I said, well, let's just sing happy birthday. And I live streamed it, we had fun. She started to cry. I said, well, that's special. She said, no, you don't understand. I've been a separatist my whole life. I am a Canadian today. And we had that over and over again because when the government intended for evil, we purposed for good. And Canadians were more united in that moment, I think, than ever before. All the attempts to unite a country never amounted to anything. But when the government truly threatened us, we became united as Canadians. And I believe today we are more united than we have ever been before. So what happened after that is the trucks that made it out, that were able to get out, and they stayed around Ottawa for about 2 weeks. And then there was a cruise that came out, and the truckers came back through. And they started to cruise across the country because 2 things happened. Flying a Canadian flag could have got you arrested, and it did. There were people that were harassed and arrested for simply flying a Canadian flag. And the use of Convoy was a red flag for sure. So they repurposed it into a cruise across Canada. When they came through Manitoba, my group, Things That Matter, was able to raise $5,300 to support them with fuel. And a friend of ours and a real philanthropist who owns a beautiful hotel provided accommodations. I got my other friends who own restaurants to provide some great food at a discounted price, and they were treated well, and we sent them on our way. And they went through Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and now they're returning back through. It's still going on. There still is a will, and there still has to be resistance. But can it be again? If we do it again, it has to get across the goal line. We have to break this government because the legacy parties of Canada are done. They're not going to help you. They are all in cahoots with each other and in some way connected to the World Economic Forum, and that's going to destroy our country. The bills that are coming through our country right now are going to destroy our country. It took 150 years to build a great country, and it's taken less than 2 years to put it on the verge of socialism and put it into 1,000 years of darkness. And that is the intention of this government, and our prime puppet is no prime minister. He is beholding to the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and the man and the myth who says, you will own nothing and be happy. It's going to get worse. You're going to have no rights and be happy. That's where we're going in Canada. That's why some of you are here. That's why many are looking at an option. When I did a quick straw poll on my Facebook page, and I invite you to follow me, I did a quick poll. We had several hundred people respond. 80% responded they're thinking of leaving Canada. You know, when a bully takes the field, they do anything. And we have a bully in our Prime Minister. A coward and a bully, and he is forcing good people out of a great country. So my challenge is to people, show up. Show up somewhere every day. Don't give up on this thing called Canada, the true north, strong and free. But here's the thing that I believe. On the streets of Ottawa, there was another thing that happened. A spirit was released. People were searching spiritually for something more to believe in. And the Spirit of God was on the streets of Ottawa. We met people. We prayed with people. People said, I'm ready to look at that option finally because there's no hope here. See, you can live in abject poverty with hope, but you can't live in a palace without hope. Hope is what we all need. And on the streets that day, and throughout the weeks, I believe God was stirring the conscience of Canadians and all the people that are on the street to look to Him for true hope. Our hope is in our Creator God, who has given us those rights. And this government is supposed to be the protector of those rights, and it is not. So, I believe God was watching, God cares, and God was taking names. And we will win this, one way or the other. But I believe Canadians are united, and as we stand together, and if we go and do this again, which is going to be that much more difficult because the bills that are being passed in our provinces and in Ottawa are dead set against allowing this to ever happen again. Right now, you can have your vehicle seized immediately for any kind of protest that you're part of. It's illegal to protest on the streets of many of our cities right now. We are heading in the wrong direction. And unless, this is the only thing that's going to happen, I'll say it again, when the government, when you're afraid of the government, it's tyranny, but when the government is afraid of you, it leads to liberty. And when tyranny is upon us, then rebellion and opposition has to be the only alternative. There is no political solution to this. I kid you not. There is only a social. When people unite, and it will take millions of Canadians to stand on the streets and say, that's enough, no more. You do not pass this line. Because Ronald Reagan once said it. He says, there is no price we will not pay for our freedom. And it's only a generation away from being taken from us. That is true. We've seen what's happened in 2 years. A generation is all it takes to lose your freedom. And when we lose the hill, we may never gain it back. We must protect this hill. We must come together as Canadians in a way that is going to have to be even bigger than what the truckers did, because they showed us how to do it. Now we got to come together, and we have to tell this government, you're out of line. And there needs to be newly elected people from the people to actually care about the people. The legacy parties are not the answer. They're there to do what they normally do. They have not suffered $1 of pain and suffering, while Canadians lost their jobs and many of them lost all of their money. That's not right. My challenge to yourself, to myself, is to find a way to show up every day and make yourself known, call out the evil, and pray to God that He shows up in a mighty way. I want to thank you all for giving me a chance to talk to you. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any, but it's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much.
That was great, Carl. And I'll pass the mic around. If you have questions, put your hand up. Oh, I'm first. Beat you. I just had a question or a clarification on 2 points. When they were not allowing you with limiting the fuel and even fires, that was in like -30 Canadian winters. You know, that's not trivial. And then the second thing is at the Coots border with Alberta, and also the bridge in Ontario, the Ambassador Bridge, were they not also making allegations, and to date unproven allegations, that there was guns, that farmers in Alberta had guns, and the media reported on that like that? But they never found anything, did they? What's the deal there?
No, there were reports of gun stashes being found, and I have some connections into law enforcement, and you know, can't mention names, of course, but I believe those were all plants. I don't think anything, this had nothing to do with it, and we can always suspect that there are bad actors that show up at any event. And we knew Antifa was around the corner. We knew people like Black Lives Matter were sitting in the wings trying to cast shade on a very righteous cause. So that was the issue. But with one person showing up with a Confederate flag, and one person with a Nazi flag, we were deemed to be Nazis, every other name that the Prime Minister could throw at us. But keep in mind, this is the man who supports Black Lives Matter, which is well regarded in the United States, at least, as a terrorist organization. So a lot of those reports we think were coincidental. They were just too likely. It was just too coincidental that it had to be a plant to make us look bad.
Thank you so much for today. And also, when we saw this happening, I was in the UK at the time. I'd left Spain because it was just, everyone was just asleep to what was going on there. There's truckers in the UK and Spain, all over the world, following you, and everyone was going, oh my God, thank God, because we had no hope until you stood up. And so thank you, first of all. And I have a question. Well, first, something that really jumped at me is that, you know, you were saying we're coming together as Canadians, but we're coming together as, and I don't know what the answer is, but it's people from all over the world. And then my question, because this is why I backed away from both sides of what was going on over the last while, the media and, you know, the other side, because I didn't have an answer for this, and I think this is what's going to save us. What are we creating? What would we love? And I don't have an answer for this, but I'm a firm believer. I think it was, I can't remember who said it, but you know, it's not fighting the old that will allow us to win or to prosper or to create the new. It's building the new. And I'm just curious, and it's an open question to you and everyone here. You know, what would we love? What would we love to create? Because yeah, I think it's about creating. So I'm just curious in your perspective, and thank you so much.
Yeah, the $1 million question, or the $1 billion question. It's going to take people coming together. I've put it in the context of Canada, but we know the problem is global. It's happening in every country around the world. And when I was confronted by the police chief, and we don't get along, my mayor and I, we don't get along. I said to the police chief, I says, is there a line that you will say no? We will not cross that line. His answer to me, I don't know, but we're not there yet. And the problem with that is we will be past that line. We have to know where we're going to draw a line. And when they come for our kids, I think that's a line we're not going to allow that to cross. The recent bill that was passed in Ontario, correct? Quebec, thank you. Thank you.
Bill 50.
Yes, Bill 50 is going to strip the rights of parents. Strip the rights of parents. If we are not our children's protector, who is? We must be. That is a line that we cannot let them cross. The problem is global, absolutely. The answer is people coming together. And all I've said to this is, you know, when I get confronted with just obey, just comply, get along to go along, I said this, give us back what we had 2 years ago, and all of this goes away. We had a better world 2 years ago than we have now. Not a perfect world, but a better world. And as our rights are being stripped away, if we could even get that back, we'd be better. But that's what we're fighting. We are fighting a battle that is more spiritual than it is anything else. Because there are people here that have a very nefarious agenda. They are intentional on destroying us as people and as countries and reducing us to absolutely nothing. Do I have the answer? No, but it's in the collectiveness of our minds that we get together and have those discussions that we're going to start to come up with how we are going to oppose this and push this back. I'm told that there are 175 countries out of 193 that have signed onto the World Economic Forum. That almost makes you hopeless. But I always say, God plus one is a majority.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Mike from Scotland. I'm not going to well up in tears, but I'm equally as emotional to say that it's not just Canada, by the way. You know, this has happened around the world. So you guys stood up as truckers, which was pretty amazing to see, but you had support internationally and worldwide, and you still do. I was here, and I didn't get in front of the camera, so I did the photo shoot for the Canadians that were here supporting the truckers. So we did that a couple of times. And we've seen in Australia, New Zealand, etc., you know, the police getting really heavy-handed. And that's really interesting, because we're all here agreeing with you. But the interesting thing is, if you think about it, those people that are in the army or in the medical sense, etc., they've all been taught not to argue with authority. So because they're being paid a salary, they're not allowed to go beyond their criteria. Teachers are exactly the same. They're not allowed to teach beyond what they're told as part of the curriculum. And so it was inevitable, if you like, that the police will step in, even though it doesn't agree with their morals or their integrity. And we saw it really heavy-handed in some of the places in Australia, New Zealand and so on. And it's really quite sad. And as you were talking, I was thinking about in the UK, back in the 70s, Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. And when this truckers things happened, I reflected back to that at the time, because I said, unfortunately, the miners' strike did not win. And today, those mining towns are poverty-stricken. You know, we're talking decades later, generations later. There's virtually no coal mines left, which is really, really sad, because that was their livelihood. And so people have moved on to other areas. So is there an easy answer? There's not an easy answer to what you're talking about, which is, I went to the bank here in Playa. Every single person in the bank was Canadian, except me, because of what Trudeau did. They froze bank accounts for people that donated to support the truckers. It's just, so if anything, guys, we're in the right environment just to be aware and awakened to what else could they do, and then we can actually at least foresee what we could do to protect it. As far as I know, I'm one of the very, 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 very few who has never even worn a mask. Right? Yeah. Here in Playa, that's really unique. And the amount of people that say to me, "Oh, just do it just to get in," No, friggin' one. I've been on the collectivos, I've been on flights, I've been on airports, I've been in the supermarkets. I walk around with a bottle of water to my mouth, but I won't play their game. I will not play their game. Simple. Thank you.
That's what it takes. It starts with every individual standing their ground. And I've always said this: stand a post and guard it. Everything that we do, this is going to be a game of inches winning it back. They have taken miles of freedom, and we're going to try to win it back an inch at a time. That's the answer. Any other question?
What Trudeau was saying, they are the French minority. He was pointing one finger to a crowd, it's 99% of the people, with three fingers to himself. They are the French minority. Worldwide, it's not only him, it's all these politician fuckers, that are completely brainwashed by the World Economic Forum, and we will prevail. We don't stop. We don't stop.
So, I saw a video last week, maybe you know something about this or not. It's a group in BC, and they said at the moment they've got trained military and ex-police. Have you heard about that? It's a fellow named Marcus. Murray, you remember I mentioned it to you, and you knew who Marcus was. Oh, yeah, we were talking. But, yeah, I just was wondering if you'd heard anything about it. They said, as of this moment, and this video is about a week old, they had these ex-military and ex-RCMP training in the background, and they were going to go, and it was all going to be all-out war, but peacefully. I don't know how they're going to do that, but...
Yeah, some of that language has put people in jail already in Canada. Pat King is an outspoken Canadian out of Red Deer, Alberta, and he had successfully disproven that the COVID virus could not be essentially located, and that was thought to be a victory at that time. And in a moment on an interview, he said, guns and bullets may be the only way out. And that is the reason, I believe, why he's still in jail today. Tamara Leach is out, the other organizers that were arrested were out, but Pat King is still in jail. So the government is taking that language serious. So I don't have a comment on that. It makes me afraid in some ways, but I know we've always looked at the Americans as lovers of their guns. And it was only until I lived in Arizona for 6 years that I understood why. The right to defend your property, to bear arms. I lived in Arizona, very close to the Mexican border, and the sheriff of our county said, I'm telling you this, you guys need to go out and get guns. Because if you're out, because we would do a lot of off-roading in Arizona, it's a fun thing to do. He says, you may be out there, and you may need to defend yourself. You may need to shoot your way out if you come across the characters that are trafficking their drugs across the border. So the right to bear arms, the right to defend our own property is a right that we should have, and I would not want to see it come to that. But yet we are in this fight, and the government is advancing on us and taking away our rights. And I've always said, desperate people will do desperate things.
Thank you. I so appreciate your story and your emotion. Mike, I just want to say thank you because here I made the decision that when I get back to Canada, I'm not going to wear a mask. But here, my thinking was, I'm in a foreign country, I'm a guest here, I'll honor their laws. But not anymore because I'm not going to support that lie. Thank you.
This was a friend of mine. He's a big freedom fighter out of Canada, and we tried to walk into an OXO store the other night, and he has a legitimate Mexican doctor authorized exemption because he has seizures if he wears a mask. And he in fact flew down to Mexico and the airline, but the little OXO store at first would not allow that. And being a true champion, he went onto the streets and he pulled the police to the store. Before she could threaten them, he said, no, I'm going to get the police here. And, it's not anything we want to be engaged in, And I was, like yourself, in the beginning part of it, I was doing my part. They asked us 30 days, 40 days, what? How many days is it? How many weeks is it? How many months is it to flatten the curve? We now know all of that was a lie.
Further to what you said, Carl, about facing down police authorities who were in no way identifiable, no name, no badge number, and who looked suspiciously foreign, non-Canadian. I'd like to share this in case anyone here might not have heard. 3 years ago, in the pre-COVID era, seems like a long time now, social media carried reports, including photographs of red Chinese soldiers on training maneuvers on Salt Spring Island. I was shocked, appalled, etc., and looked in legacy mainstream media for reports of it, and eventually did find a little trickle down or trickle up reports to it. Anyway, that said, I'd like to just comment one more thing. In 2019, in that pre-COVID era, there were routine weekly demonstrations in Hong Kong for freedom and democracy. Out of 7 million people in Hong Kong, 1 million, 1 in 7 would show up weekly on the streets of Hong Kong to protest the incursions, the oppression by the Chinese government, Chinese communist government in Beijing. And what shut it down? Suddenly, the Wuhan COVID story surfaced, reared its ugly head, and the government declared a health emergency and shut that protest down. They neutered it. which is to say governments have lots of aces up their sleeve, and anyone taking on such oppressive authority, I would say, needs a plan B and a plan C in case they go with plan A against you. Thank you.
Yeah, those reports, they've been verified. I mean, we know that we have a prime minister, a prime puppet that admires China and wants to turn Canada into China. That's very real. That's his aspiration. This guy is so desperate to receive the accolades from his buddies at those places that none of us will ever go to, that he's prepared to sell this country and sacrifice every Canadian for his own personal gain. That just makes it wrong. Anybody else before we wrap it up here? Thank you very much. My pleasure.